Bubba Ray Dudley was sort of winding me up
Uh-huh.
because he came the first time I met him. He comes through the door. I'm talking to Mark Coffey, and Bubba Ray Dudley comes through the door and just like bears over me. He's looming down on me. You come with God for the table, bro.
Yeah.
Are you from here then? Like,
I went to, it was a couple of years ago, Noam.
Noam's actually the first guy to attack me in ICW. When I first appeared for, the first time I appeared for them was in Mary Hill Community Centre when they were still running shows up there.
Yeah, yeah.
I just made like a guest appearance. And I was meant to just do, like, perform a couple of songs or whatever, and have a bit of banter. And I think I was on my way up to do gigs at the Stand that night, so I was like, I had to come and open the show rather than be in the middle like we planned. But I asked to be jumped. I was like, if I'm going to do a wrestling show, I have someone jump us and get some heat, can I?
Yeah.
So it was Noam and another guy, Rob Cage, that jumped me. Noam did the Randy Orton running punt to the head, can I?
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
But I remember at the time, actually them talking about him, sort of backstage, going like that. Like, everyone knows Noam's going to get signed and go to the States and stuff. And I have to be honest, like at the time, because at the time when he was like 15, like, so at the time I was like, what? That wee guy? Like,
Yeah.
I don't mean in the sense of like, oh, he's unimpressive looking. I'm just like, but that's a child, that's a wee boy.
Yeah. Is he not like the youngest ever person to get signed or something mad like that?
It'd definitely be up there because he's been signed for years now, actually. Aye.
Yeah.
He's been there like longer than quite a lot of the wrestling, quite a lot of the rest of the British, like NXT UK signees. Yeah, because he got signed before NXT UK, I think, was a thing. So he's been sort of back and forth and then just over there permanently for quite a while.
He used to go to the same gym as me. He's just always in smashing it with like huge deadlifts that I could only like dream of when he was proper young.
Well, that's the thing, it's like, obviously I'm at the time going to go like, oh, that wee guy and stuff, but even at the time he could have bench pressed me. Do you know what I mean? He's always a wee unit, you know what I mean? Always looked strong and stuff. And he always like, so obviously, I think someone observed, it was Josie Long actually, I remember coming to one of ICW shows. She's a big wrestling fan and lives in Glasgow and we're tweeting while she's there. So she observed that he looks like an Italian movie star.
Yeah,
he's got good look, does. And so I remember thinking that, it's like, oh, he's going to get signed and stuff, and I'm like, oh, can I see if he grew up a bit and all that? But then you actually see him working on shows and stuff, and you're like, right, I get it.
Yeah.
He's like pure. Already folk will have eyes on him and stuff from quite a young age and all that. But it's just mad that it's a sort of early learning curve about wrestling, how young people quite often start, and how young people see the potential in them to be like, oh, in about 5 years' time, even though at the time they're technically still a minor, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I suppose that's just the nature of it, because it's athleticism and it's like athletes need to start in their teens and stuff, and that's when we need to use that. Need to use their ligaments while we've still got them, I suppose.
That's crazy for there. We've got Noam Dar, Biffy Clyro, and Robbie Burns. That's about it. It's a big gap in between.
Well, there's Big Drew as well, and also Piper Niven.
Oh, the
WWE.
Aye, the
Viper.
Yeah,
Cam.
Viper. That was it.
She is fair, I think.
Was she?
Yeah.
Shit, right, I didn't realise.
Yeah, like a whole. It's mad looking at the roster now, and it's just all so many Scottish folk. It's like back in the day, that would have been a mental concept.
Yeah.
Like that, like Rowdy Roddy Piper. He's not even Scottish, but that's the closest we've got. We'll root for him. And then now it's like half the roster on every show are all Scottish folk, but it's, to me, it shouldn't be that much of a surprise, because I remember sort of starting working for ICW and being taken aback, almost like blown away by how good everyone was in comparison. It's just professional and so experienced and seasoned even by that point. And I think that's even what WWE found after, like when they signed them. I think they found quite a lot of the people they signed ended up practically training other like Americans that they'd signed over there, because the Americans or whoever else they'd signed over there just have less experience. It's like the Scottish and like British people, I think overall, had spent years doing shows like up and down the country and in Europe or whatever, and Japan as well. A lot of them travelled to, So they'd already been cutting their teeth doing it, like for 10 years even at some points. So I think by the time they got over to the States, they're just like, oh, we can actually teach the folk that you're bringing in now because we've got so much more experience. We get as much experience as your actual trainers here, kind of thing.
Did that like open the door once a couple people came in? You're like, okay, these people are of a standard, so we don't mind.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think it sort of it opened their eyes to be like that. Like, actually, if we bring them in, we can skip all the months or years of seasoning, and like, this is how you perform for TV, and this is where you know where your cameras are and stuff. It's like all the British people have already had all that experience, and a lot of that is ICW as well. Like with the size of the shows we were doing, like the Hydro and whatever else.
I was at the Hydro. I was going to ask about that. With I was absolutely buckled at you. What was it? You're a blight to the carpentry industry or something to the Dudley boys.
The Dudley boys,
That was so good.
I'm still very chuffed with that line.
Yeah, it's so good, man.
Yeah.
It's because you posted a clip of it recently and just reminded me. I remember finding it hilarious on the night, but it's so good. Had you like met the Dudleys before you came out and started like giving them grief? Yeah, all right, okay.
Yeah, a wee bit. But Bubba Ray Dudley is one of the most intimidating human beings I've ever seen in my life. I mean, they're much bigger than you realise even when you see them on TV. Like when you meet them in real life, you're just like, how is a human being shaped like that? Like Bubba Ray Dudley especially, as I don't know if you'd say he's getting no neck or just all neck. It's just like he's, like Juggernaut at X-Men. He's shaped like his head just tapers up like that, and then his head just goes straight into his shoulders like that, and he's way taller than you think as well, and just wider in general. So like when he's bearing down on you, fucking hell, it puts the shits up you.
Did you ever see him on The Weakest Link?
I did, yeah.
He was like Footman Robinson, Connor Sweet Cheeks. And
that's right, aye. And I remember him being no bad at it.
Yeah.
I feel like William Regal was definitely, he stood out as being like, he's smarter than the rest of them. I don't know why I go with the Americans, but...
You didn't go through a table though, did you? It was just Davy Blaze or something?
Davy Blaze went through a table, which ended up being a compromise. So he was sort of, Bubba Ray Dudley was sort of winding me up, apparently, because he came, the first time I met him, he comes through the door, I'm talking to Mark Coffey, about what's going to happen later on and stuff, and Bubba Ray Dudley comes through the door and just like bails over me, he's looming down on me. You come with God through a table, bro? I'm just like, And I said this to Bubba Ray Dudley in real life. I went, can you do me like you did Terry Runnels? Because when he used to, I'm like, can you do me like you done the Divas? Because when he used to super bomb, because he was wanting to super bomb me for the top rope, not do the 3D, but like actually get me up the top rope and super bomb me through the So, but when he used to do that to the women in WWF, as opposed to the men, he would take the bump on his arse. He would take it as a sit-out power bomb through the table, kind of hang and sort of protect them a bit there if it was a woman. Like I wanted the Mae Young bomb basically, rather than. And I'm relieved that it ended up being Blaze because watching that footage back, he looks like he's try to smash Blaze right through to the sewage system.
And Devon's
absolutely smashes him. Exactly. Yeah, pulls his whole arse out. I'm like, I wouldn't have been up for that. So, and then as soon as he walked away, Mark Coffey was like, he's bamming you up. He's been bamming folk up all day. But then apparently, I kind of found out relatively recently, that apparently he was dead set and putting me through a table, and it was I think it was Mark Coffey and Jackie Polo had to sort of talk him down to be like, no, like, you'll kill him. He's not a worker.
Do you not want to like take that? Is that like not like a rite of passage?
That's the thing, is like I would have taken it. If they'd have been adamant like that, I'd have been like, right, I'm getting put through a table by the Dudleys. That is a dream come true, you know?
Yeah.
And I haven't gone through a table in wrestling, and it has always been a thing. But see, just practically speaking, talking about just basic physics, I weigh like about half, maybe not as much as half, right? But I weigh quite a bit less than like someone like Blaze, who, as tables are designed to have, wrestling tables are designed to have folk, say about 200 pounds plus, to get smashed through them. Practically speaking, even if Bubba Ray Dudley absolutely pelted me through that table, because I weigh about 150 pounds or whatever, he would have had to do me like he did Spike Dudley. I weigh about the same as Spike Dudley. So when you watch old footage of Spike Dudley getting mashed through tables, they are like throwing him like a dart through these things. Like they're just like, and that was his gimmick. Is basically he was like a rag doll, and he would land in his neck and all this.
Yeah, if you watch highlights,
absolutely melted.
It's absolutely mental what he went through.
And like I always loved Spike Dudley. Do you know what I mean? But to watch from afar, I'm not Spike Dudley. Do you know what I mean? I'm more your Jimmy Mouth of the South Heart or whatever, like Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Yeah.
That's what I always sort of model myself after in wrestling. Not Spike Dudley. Full respect to him or whatever else. But watching that footage back in Blaze, going through the table, I'm like, they wouldn't have even got me through that table in the first attempt.
Right, okay.
And if I'd have just bounced off it, you know what I mean? You'd have had 6,000 plus folk going like, one more time, one more time. And me kind of going, I don't think I'll survive one more time. But getting booted by Bubba Ray Dudley all the way out the ring is still the highlight of my life. One of the highlights of my life. Like I remember with Crystal Clarity cutting that promo where they calling him a blight to the carpentry business.
So good.
Getting in the ring and then turning around to have just Bubba Ray Dudley's boot like that, just go right through me. And I didn't need to sell it, I needed like it did send me arse over tip that went out the ring. Yeah. And it was a surprise as well because I was expecting, the way we talked about it, I was expecting a clothesline off of Devon.
Okay.
So I turned down and Bubba Ray Dudley's big, massive foot's coming towards me like, alright, go with it.
Did you get any other wrestling highlights?
Tons. I'm trying to think.
Were you always into it like, as a kid and stuff? Or?
Yeah. So I feel like I was into it. It's like a weird boast to have, but I feel like I was into it before everyone else at school.
Right.
Because my brother, so my brother's pal, his family lived in Wales, right? And they had the first cable connection, one of the first cable connections in Britain, basically. Okay. They were getting cable before most other folk were getting Sky or whatever else.
Right.
So he would start bringing up tapes of this thing, the WWF.
Right, okay.
When I was a kid, what would have been like 3-4 year old at the time or whatever. It's absolutely blew my mind.
That young?
Yeah. To see the Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan came out and that. And then when I got a wee bit older, I had the whole Santa Claus revelation about it. Mm-hmm. And it was like I was aghast.
Yeah.
I was devastated. So for a wee while I was just like, no, I'm not gonna watch that stuff. And then around about the time I remember everyone at sort of primary school, I guess, would have been a time started getting into wrestling. That's when it started crossing over into Britain, like Hulk Hogan and all of that. Because I remember actually at the time, you know, like Gremlins 2, the new batch, you know, like Hulk Hogan cameos in that.
Yeah.
Right? There's a different version of that when they originally released that in Britain. They didn't have the Hulk Hogan cameo. Right. They had a bit, it was like archive footage of John Wayne.
Right, okay.
And the Gremlins interact with John Wayne and have a shootout with him and stuff. So they've edited in Gremlins and cowboy outfits and have a shootout with John Wayne tonight. So they did that specifically for Britain and I think a few other international markets because at the time and all like that, nobody knows who Hulk Hogan is in Britain. So that'll just like go over folks' heads.
Yeah.
So I remember that at the time and I'm being frustrated, like I know who Hulk Hogan is, I want to see the Hulk Hogan bit.
Yeah.
And now later when that's on TV and stuff, now it's always the Hulk Hogan bit, you never see the John Wayne thing after that.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah, so it started being more mainstream in Britain and I was all frustrated at the time, so I was into it before all you and stuff. But I sort of fell away from it a wee bit until like the Attitude Era. I was like more a teenager and I started getting into it a bit more. Obviously it was sort of different like vibe or whatever at the time and appealed more to me pubescent boy at the time, so who it was designed for.
Who's your man?
So since then I was like absolutely hooked. I was just like when the Attitude Era came about, I was just like I became obsessed with it almost like wrestling.
Yeah.
I became known for it at high school, just like how just full flung into it I became sort of thing.
Right, okay. We had that at school as well, that Attitude Era. And I always liked the bad guys. Everyone else was like, oh, The Rock. I was Triple H all the way around. Yeah. Just because he was such a good dick.
He's brilliant heel. I mean, that's my sort of idea of what a big, strong heel at the top of the card should be.
Yeah.
Because that's when I started getting fully, totally becoming ingrained in me and stuff. Was running about that sort of Triple H ascending that sort of era, do you know what I mean? So it's like he is the sort of model of the heel to beat kind of thing for me.
Yeah.
Obviously what he's become now as well, it's like, yeah, it's just like kept going and going and was gutted to not actually get a chance to meet him.
Oh, did you not?
I wasn't in that show, and Cardiff it was, right? When he made that surprise appearance in ICW, it was so frustrating because I'd been given the choice to go down and be on that show.
Shit.
But it was just as a sort of, so I wasn't going to be a manager and stuff, stuff that happened. But Dallas was like, we'll bring you down and have you doing commentary or, like, I don't know, commentary or sort of the guest promo or whatever. And I was like, you know what, we don't need to just shoehorn me into, I don't need to be on these shows, they're just going to be just a wee tour and stuff. And then that footage popped up and I was like, I was raging. It was around about fireworks night and I was so sulky. We went to see the fireworks display just in there at Glasgow Green. And eventually my girlfriend at the time was like, you just want to go? Because I was just like refusing to look up at the fireworks. No, I want to meet Triple H. Like, I would have like at most shook his hand or whatever. Like, I wouldn't have interacted with him that much, but still would have been cool.
Oh, I can imagine the pain, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool though, like, that attitude either, like the amount of wrestlers and stuff I became fans of at the time, and then later on doing ICW and literally doing shows with them at the Hydro and stuff, or even at the garage, like Godfather came and done a show at the garage.
Right, okay.
He's one of the coolest guys you'll ever meet in wrestling, just such a nice guy, funny as well. Came backstage, first thing he says when he came backstage, massive, gigantic as well, he must be like 6, 7 or 8. So he comes in behind the curtain and goes like, God damn, there's a lot of white people in here. It's just like immediately funny. And just the chat, it was just such a nice guy, easy going with, and he's talking about how he runs he might run a couple actually, sort of gentlemen's clubs or whatever in Vegas.
Yeah.
And folk were asking him about it. What's the Nation of Domination up to these days? And he's like, I've actually got a deal working in one of my gentlemen's clubs. And we Chris told immediately, went like, he's a good dancer.
Of course he is.
Yeah. So folk like that, Rob Van Dam.
At
the Hydro as well. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to. I talked to Rob Van Dam quite a bit. He was just like brand new. I'm still annoyed that I never got a photo with him because I gave him one of my posters that I did. I drew for the Hydro every year. I did the big posters.
I bought one for the old uni podcast studio. I left it in there by accident, but it was really good. Like Mick Foley and stuff.
Yeah, I'd have been the first. That would been the SEC show I done the Foley one. So yeah, every year, sort of Fear More, and I did the poster with the big imports on them and stuff. So I gave it to Rob Van Dam. He was really appreciative and all that, and I wish I'd got a photo. Yeah. At that point. Because that way, it's like when you're doing shows with them, I'm a bit conscious of being like that. Like we're working together, and I don't want to all of a sudden be like that. Well, I've been a fan since about. But
make like a weird dynamic.
Yeah, kinda. But then in retrospect, I'm like, no, it's not embarrassing to be like, I've been a fan since I was a kid. Yeah. Actually, folk want to hear that, no matter who they are. It is flattering, it is a nice thing to hear, and getting a photo with someone, it's also a nice thing. It's like no matter who you are, I suppose it depends who you are, like different folk might have like different patience with it or whatever. But a guy like that, I shouldn't have been that self-conscious about being, I shouldn't have been a mark and got a photo. It's like, I'm a mark. Like, he understands, he would have been a mark when he was younger as well, do you know what I mean? In fact, he was one of the, when the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, used to get folk out the crowd to like kiss his feet or bounce a ball. Right. And you'll get $100 and then it's always chucks the ball away or whatever. He was one of the kids that came up and made him kiss his feet and stuff, like in the 90s. That's mad. Yeah, so he was, he was there. He would have understood. But he was brand new, he was so nice and sort of complimentary and that. Kurt Angle only really said hello to in passing, and it was after his match with Joe Coffey as well, so he's just like, covered in sweat, and just like you want to let him get past. He's another guy who's like in real life, his physical dimensions are just like you're like how do you turn your head? His neck's so wide, and he's broken it like 6 times. Yeah, maybe it has to work on it, especially because he's broke it like that. Yeah. It's like it's overcompensating almost. He's not the tallest guy. Like I remember going past, and he's not, compared to Godfather, whoever else, but he's just, an impressive looking human being. But I later found out as well, I found out that night actually he was very complimentary about our stuff actually, my promo at the beginning. that was the same night that the Dudley boys were on. So he was watching, he was up in his changing and watching it in the big screen and stuff. So I opened that show and I sort of heel promo. So I later heard that he'd passed on. I think he'd been talking to Blaze maybe, and he was like putting us over, going like, "Yeah, I like old school heel stuff. I like you guys." And
that's class.
Like, yeah, that was awesome. It's like he knows his stuff. Do you know what I mean? Rey Mysterio as well.
Yeah.
That was the year after that. Said hello to him twice. Said hello to him once with the mask on, once with the mask off.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, it's quite a privilege actually.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Seems like a dead nice guy, but again, just hello sort of in passing.
Yeah. And how, like, when did the art stuff start? Is that like a from school thing?
Yeah, since as long as I can remember, basically, since I was a kid. I was always drawing stuff, and then all through school, that's what I was sort of known as, more than like, I was never really class clown or anything like that. I was pretty quiet and stuff, but I was known as the sort of cartoonist, the artist. I don't want to say unfortunately, but it's like if you get known for that, then it's like you get known as the caricaturist, which I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not the best caricaturist, but folk just expect you to like, oh, draw me, like immediately. Which I suppose again, in retrospect, is flattering. You know what I mean? It's like a nice thing. And I've later found out as well. I'm in my 40s now, but folk that I went to school with have kept like drawings that I did in primary school and stuff.
Wow.
Which is I've got mixed feelings about, right? Just personally, I mean, it's awesome. That's so cool. For one thing, I did a thing in primary 5, I think, where I did room 15 fighter, I called it. Where I did like Street Fighter 2. I did everyone as
characters,
beat 'em up characters with their special moves and stuff.
Yeah.
Some of them quite insulting. Like the belly bounce or whatever. I won't say who that applied to. But just like everyone sort of their characteristics in the primary school class, like I made them into sort of special moves in a fighting game.
That's
and
cool.
I found out now, like folk have kept that, like they've still got it like pinned up on their wall and all this. Which I've got mixed feelings about, right? Not to get too deep, but I'll bring this up to my ma, because my ma at one point, it was a few years ago now, but I phoned my ma and I was like, I'm gonna come back, and I made, when I was a kid, just like stacks of like comic strips, and I invented literally hundreds of characters and made comic strips out of all of them, all these different characters and sort of interacting with each other or whatever. And I phoned my mum up, like, I'm going to come back and pick them up. She's like, I threw them all out. So it's like, I'll remind her of stuff like that. When I'm like, do you realise that like folk that I went to school with that I've not seen in like
saw the
30
value
odd
in
years?
it.
Exactly. I've kept these things as just like a sentimental value or whatever, but to you, it's just that, you know what I mean? It's just these doodles.
That's devastating.
It is devastating. She's like, well, let's not go into that. That's more for a therapy session than that. I don't want that recorded. I'd need to pay someone to sing at some point.
So aside from your mum, is it right your brother and dad, I don't know if you have any other siblings, are both comedians as well?
Yeah. So it was my dad that started basically started doing stand-up when he was 50, turned 50,
right, okay.
Started doing stand-up. So he obviously came in quite late, and it was, you know what I mean, he'd had a job for years and stuff. He worked for the Herald for years at that point. So almost just kind of did it as a side, like sort of hobby. But then, I mean, he would have been one of the first people to gig at the Stand Comedy Club as it exists. Because when he started gigging for the Stand at the time was just a night running in a basement room in Edinburgh called Christie's.
Right, okay.
So the Stand was the name of the night, but it was running in this venue and maybe a couple others. They eventually got to the point where they opened up their own club in Edinburgh first. And so my dad would have been one of the first comedians to gig there because he was on the roster or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was him that sort of started it. Kept like encouraging my brother in the first place because he was like, you know, older, 7 years older than me, so he was at that point just like old enough to be in sort of licensed places or whatever, but he was at uni, so it's like delayed that he was up in Stirling. But at the time, so I was being 15 I guess, I started doing sketches and a double act with my pal Martin Smith from school, who lives not far from here now actually. his wife Lou, my pets, lives in Brighton. And but we started doing, we'd always sort of had a similar sense of humour. We sort of grew up, I suppose, influenced by a lot of the same things. League of Gentlemen, stuff like that was one of the...
it's like creepy sketches then.
Yeah, that sort of real, that sort of dark sense of humour. Well, so we started doing sketches. I suppose we're influenced by that would usually have a sort of dark twist.
Right.
Like League of Gentlemen was sort of inspired that way. So we started doing that in school, high school. Like won the talent show contest. We won this.
Oh, you did it live?
Yeah, we started doing it live.
Cool.
As we live sketches. We entered. It was a Fanta teen comedy competition in Glasgow. It was through the school actually. It was offered back. Stu Who came round and did workshops in our school. Who recently passed away sadly, but he was a veteran stand-up in Scotland.
Okay.
I mean, he was one of the guys that sort of built the Scottish comedy scene, even years and years before the stand was even ever a thing.
Okay.
He was a guy that, you know what I mean, he was hosting the Funny Farm back in the day in the STV that would have been on in like the late 80s, early 90s, like Bill Hicks was on that and stuff.
Oh wow, right.
I don't know if it's still on there, but there was an episode on YouTube of Stu Who hosting it and Bill Hicks does a guest spot. Kind of doesn't do that well. Struggles in front of a Scottish audience. And a bit like, what are you talking about? Scud missiles for? And like, just talk about Iron Brew or whatever. An interesting episode though, because it's got him and it's also got Greg Hemphill and his comedy trio at the time.
Okay.
With like Rab Christie and stuff. Again, doing sort of sketches, doing sort of surreal sketches. So it's fascinating to watch actually.
Yeah.
It's like, here's Greg Hemphill, here's Bill Hicks and all that. It's like, it's quite a snapshot.
Weird combo,
So off the back of that, Stu Who came round, did these workshops. We went and did this sort of workshop thing in Glasgow. It was a wee sort of competition. So we won that, went down to London to compete in a sort of national thing. We'd done it all around the country at the London Comedy Store, hosted by Jonathan Ross. So technically, our first ever gig was at the Comedy Store, hosted by Jonathan Ross.
That's mad.
So it was just a sharp decline since then. Ever since, it's just like, you start there and then it's just like, anything after that is going to be a bit of a letdown. Because we started gigging after that technically, but it's like, we were about 15, 16 at the time.
What were you called?
So in the first place, we were called Martin and Neil. Very imaginative. And then I changed my stage name to the Wee Man.
All the way back then?
All the way back then, when I still would have been a teenager, but at the time the Wee Man wasn't just in reference to that character, that was my sort of all-round stage name.
Right.
So I'd have been different characters, but under that sort of, being billed as that name as a sort of journey. Like Professor Wellington Puggy. It was one of the other ones we done. It was a bit more surreal. It was where like Martin was a Neanderthal that I'd thawed out in Oban. So I was trying to train him to interact with human civilization by like practicing self-defense and a series of raspberry sponge cakes that I was bringing out the bag and stuff. So it was just like smashing raspberry sponge cakes at his face, which got us into trouble with a couple of venues actually at the time when we did it. At the Stand Comedy Club, I remember we did it and just splatted all this whipped cream and sponge cake over the back of it. So I had to go back on and clean it while the audience was still sitting there.
No shit.
Yeah. So I learned stuff like that. But like one of the sketches we did in the first place was him coming on as a comedian, all dressed up in a suit and stuff, but deliberately sort of fumbling and sweating away and like coming out his notes and shaking and stuff. To set it up as if the audience would be like sitting there awkward, like, oh, guy's struggling, and then me coming out in a trackie and all that, and interrupting him, and try to tap money or a snout off him, whatever, and then it turned into a wee sort of dialogue between us. I think that was that would have been the first one featuring that character, and then like...
That sounds very like Andy Kaufman, but before its time, kind of like, you know, did you like
that
Echo
was...
to punch him and shit like that?
That was, because it would take folk aback and sometimes staff. You'd see security coming and going to try to grab me until like bar staff went like, no, it's all part of the thing or whatever. I'd tap quite often. We later did a sketch where he was a goth guy with a top hat, stuff like that, just holding ridiculous golf looking, who was there to buy drugs off of me.
Okay.
So that was another wee scene. But it was still set up as if, that was a bit more suspension of disbelief, because like, I think at one point in that sketch I was like, so you wanted to arrange to meet me in a comedy club in front of 100 odd people to buy drugs, mate. But so the name of the character at that point was Scratchy.
Right.
Which was basically my nickname in high school, or one of my nicknames anyway, because my nickname all through childhood and stuff was Bratchy. My second name was Bratchpiece, so it's like in high school especially, you just take whatever someone's name is and go at the end of it. That is how it works, no matter who you are. So I kind of changed that to Scratchy. So I used that for that character. And so I wanted to start doing solo stand-up. But I was like, I don't want to do it as myself. I want to pick one of the characters that I've done. And I was like, the BAM character gets over immediately. Folk respond to that more than Professor Wellington Puggy for one. Folk would stare at that one sometimes. So I picked that, but by that point, my brother had started gigging.
Okay.
My dad had convinced him to go along to like a stand-up workshop via the Stand. So he'd started doing stand-up, and his stage name at the time was Bratchy, because that was also his nickname all through school, and it still remains his name.
Okay.
So as I got older, when I moved into Glasgow, we're both in Glasgow, I had to sort of transition out of being called Bratchy. I'd stopped introducing myself as Bratchy. It was like weird to me to be like, I'm Neil, and I have to deal with that. But still to this day, like folk guys I grew up with and stuff still call me Bratchy.
Okay.
Or Scratchy or Scratchpiece or whatever. But folk who I've met later on in life call me Neil and call my big brother Bratchy and stuff. So when I wanted to start doing that character as a solo stand-up act, I wanted to call him Scratchy, and my brother at the time went like, no, you can't, that'll be confusing, because I'm Bratchy.
Oh, really?
Like Bratchy and Scratchy.
Yeah.
On the Scottish comedy scene at the same time and stuff. So I was like, all right, fair enough, I'll just use the wee man then, because that was my overall stage name. But to be honest, years after the fact, it's kind of serendipitous. I think the wee man works better. I think the vaguer it is, the better sort of thing.
It's good in comedy, like you've got the big one and the wee man. It's like
I'm totally mentioned in the same breath as Billy Connolly, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think it sort of sums up a lot of things about even just Scottish mentality and Scottish nature. Mm-hmm. It's like the wee man's disease is like Napoleon complex and stuff, and that is encapsulated in that character. Sometimes just like, you know what I mean, the undercurrent of aggro and stuff that you get. I've also observed that in Scotland and Glasgow and stuff especially, you almost need to be more wary of a guy the smaller and scrawnier that he is. Do you know what I mean? They'd be more menacing, exactly. So that was the sort of mentality I used. They're talking about Billy Connolly actually. I was another guy that, like, when I was still doing the double act with Martin, and it was that sketch where he starts off as being a stand-up and I come on and interrupt him. Billy Connolly was in the audience one night at the Stand in Glasgow. It was bizarre because it was just like a Sunday night. Raymond Mearns was hosting. It was a Sunday night, and at the time, the Sunday night wasn't a big deal, so it was dead. So the gig started, and there was a comedian come on. She came backstage, and when Billy Connolly's out there watching, we were like, "No, he's not." They're winding us up, and she's like,
"Some guy with you."
Exactly. And she's like, "Go out and look," and like, so I sort of sneak by to go to the toilet. I'm like, "Whoa!" Like, your heart starts going like, "That's crazy," because he is really big. It's like Bubba Ray Dudley style. He's bigger than you think now. Yeah, he has a big one. So it was bizarre. We go on and do our sketch and stuff, and because it's not that busy, all you can really hear is Billy Connolly laughing at jokes you've written, and you're like, try not to get swept up in the moment of that. Of like, oh, you just keep going with the routine. Exactly. But it is like quite a galling thing. It's just like, that's better go well enough, you know what I mean? But then like he comes backstage at one point, sits with us all, and like, he chats away with us, and it's such a shame. This was way before like everyone's got a camera on them all the time, so we never got a photo of us all sitting there. So folk need to just take my word for it, whatever. But he sat and chatted with us, and he was so funny as well. He's such a nice guy, and so funny, just obviously naturally funny, you know what I mean? But in a way that was surprising as well. He almost kind of bamming us up, like pranking us. So like for one thing, as soon as I saw him, I went out and I texted on my Nokia at the time, my wee rubber Nokia.
Yeah.
I texted my dad and I texted my brother for one thing like that. Billy Connolly's at the stand, believe me if you want. My dad would have been in Motherwell at the time, so he couldn't make it in.
Yeah.
But my brother, I think was at some party at the other side of town. As soon as I texted my brother, he turned up at the stand like 15 minutes later, totally out of breath. Where's Billy Connolly? He just couldn't miss it. He just ran all the way there. So he came backstage as well, and we were all sitting about, and so my brother sat right next to Billy Connolly.
Aye.
And just in the middle of a conversation at one point, he suddenly turns into my brother and sort of looms over him, going like that. So, have you found the love of our Lord Jesus Christ in your life yet, son? And my brother's just like shaking himself up. Not yet, Billy, and stuff, but he's just like bamming him up.
Yeah.
He's just trying to see how he'd react. And I later found out that he used one of my jokes, like not on stage or anything like that, but in conversation, I think.
Right, okay.
It might have been, I think, because he was back, and I think he'd made a point to go and see a few comedy nights or whatever, meet up with like a few comedians. I think he'd maybe met up with Jenny Godley, and so definitely met up with Des McLean. I think that's who I heard this from, maybe second hand, because Des McLean, especially at the time, would sometimes do a Billy Connolly impression and stuff. It's quite well known for his big impression. So I think Billy Connolly was aware of that and met up with him and stuff. Apparently he, again just in conversation, but like told one of the lines from for the sketch kind of thing. Yeah. Just like, oh, it's a really funny bit and all that.
Oh,
like, so it doesn't work as outside of a sketch. It doesn't work as just like, this is a joke. Do you know what I mean? So it's like I've said that to folk in the past. And I'm like, oh, what's the joke? Thinking it's going to be, you know what I mean? Oh, it's just like, where does he park his bike? You know what I mean? Like a classic like that or something. Like, but it was just like a sort of character-based thing where I go, yeah, it's the bit where I found out, I'm like, what are you up to the guy, to Martin, who's doing the stand-up act. I'm trying to do stand-up comedy. And then the wee man Scratch at the time kind of goes like that. Oh, I've got a joke for you. Guy goes into a doctor's office. Doctor, I feel like a pair of curtains. Doctor says, I'm prescribing methadone. That's not so much a joke as a true story. It's anecdotal. So again, it's like in the sketch, it's like the way that's built up. Just, do you know what I mean? But as a joke, you don't just like say that, do you know what I mean? But apparently Billy Connolly, you know what I mean? The most famous Scottish comedian there's ever been. Recounted that in conversation and in a complimentary way, do you know what I mean?
That's amazing.
Yeah, can't say fairer than that.
Has either his daughter or his sister, so my uncle used to stay in Clarence Drive in the West End, and he had this basement flat, and across from him was, I think it was his daughter. So about, like, they were sitting out in the garden one day, and the sister was out, and I think she had like the weavings or something, and then Billy walks out. Freddie's like, holy shit, like, it's Billy Connolly. And he's like, oh, how you doing? You know, my name's Freddie. And he's like, what do you think of these? And he had like 2 nipple piercings. He's like, got them done in Turkey. It's like half a second into meeting him. And speaking about my uncle, so he was in a couple of shows, Bad Boys and Rabsy Nesbitt and stuff that were written by Ian Pattison.
Yeah.
So you're working with him now in your friend's show and something coming up?
Yeah. So we just had a show at the Fringe for the Stand Comedy Club at Stand 3. We were going to run there a couple of weeks. So the whole idea of that was to sort of make the wee man strip away all the cartoonishness and stuff that I might have, you know, layered on top of him over the years gradually. So I strip all that away. I'd been thinking, I suppose, about like what appealed to folk maybe in the first place, and a lot of it was down to the sort of authenticity of like folk being taken in by, for instance, that original video, and still to this day, being convinced that that's the real deal, and it's just a wee guy that went out with a camera one day in town.
Yeah.
So it's like realising that like folk connected with something that felt authentic more than anything else, rather than try to go for a gag or something broad or cartoonish.
Yeah.
Ian Patterson being, you know what I mean, the guy to make it an authentic, like a real person again, the thing that people connected with in the first place. So like meeting up with Ian and stuff gradually, it was a case of like sort of stripping away more ludicrous, cartoonish, and I suppose in a way confusing aspects that I'd sort of laden the character with.
Yeah.
Like for one thing, lighting a bunch of the videos, and I used to have it on stage as well. It's a cumbersome fucking prop to have, a costume piece or whatever. But it was my pal who became a jeweller. Jenny made this big gold, it's not actual gold, it's plastic spray painted gold Star of David for me.
Yeah,
It was a big medallion. So that was a sort of personal thing. In real life, I sort of compromise with my dad, because it's my dad's, it's his side of the family that's the sort of Jewish heritage comes through. And for a couple of years at Christmas, ironically at Christmas, he'd give me a Star of David medallion.
Right, okay.
Like, because he's got one basically.
I was wondering why you had it.
Yeah. So each time he gave me it, I'd be like, this is lovely, I really appreciate it, but I don't wear jewellery, like I've got bad skin.
Yeah.
So like jewellery always sort of sets it off, makes it itchy and stuff like that. So I inherited Jewishness from my dad, and I inherited like a zinc allergy from my mom. So I don't know if like you forgot that or whatever, but instead of wearing like a Star of David gold medallion all the time, I thought I'd, you know, as a nice compromise, I'll bastardise the religion and turn it into a big cartoon character, stupid thing that just makes people on YouTube comments go, "Wish you my Jewish star?"
Yeah.
I
took it as like your character bumped it off someone or something like that.
Well, that's the thing. It's like it's too many questions. I realised that now. I was putting that on was like personally speaking, it was my wee sort of nod to like my dad's side of the family, or whatever else. Even more so than the wee man himself being Jewish or whatever. I think in the first place when I started doing stand-up, I added that twist to it. Like the wee man was a Jewish Ned and all this. And stuff like that gradually gets shaved away because I'm like, folk don't really... Yeah. It's confusing to folk, like it's too much a stretch. So it just ended up as this weird affectation that I was wearing, just sort of... But it just, folk would keep asking, like, what's the mad Jew star all about? And I'd just respond like, I'm a mad Jew. Folk never believe me or whatever. But it is too... Yeah, it's too weird. And that's one of the main things that as soon as you see that, it makes it something inauthentic and makes it like you don't see folk cutting about like that. Yeah. You might see them with the big, if the original video like the big dollar sign medallion or whatever, something like that. It's not that much a stretch of the imagination. But the big Star of David, apart from anything else, it was too jaggy. That symbol is like when you're getting it over your head, you're like, you need to be careful with it and stuff. It's a dangerous legend, you know what I mean? Recent events have proved that. It's not going into that. Yeah, so, that's another thing. You know what I mean? With the current climate, I don't want to be cutting about with a giant Star of David.
Yeah. I know in Glasgow as well.
Might as well get a wee armband. Do the work. Preemptive strike on myself.
That was one of the things that surprised me with watching interviews of you, because obviously, like, I know I've seen you in like ICW, and I've seen you say like your improv and comedy and the Ned's Crew, Feet Wee Man and all that, but you seem quite hard on yourself and wanting to like have a deeper, I don't know how to explain it. You're quite hard on yourself, but also wanting to get away from that, like you're saying, strip it down and have this more serious character, and like you've got this like story inside you, whatever, that you're kind of annoyed that to please the crowd you're not getting across or something? You're kind of stuck in your own success, maybe? Is that fair?
Sort of like for years, maybe, I would say got pretentious about it, but like stuff like that, putting the Star of David on and stuff, taking it in too weird a direction to sort of almost appease my weirder sense of humour. But just that, for example, it's just like it's too weird, it's too obscure for folk, and it just takes it to a place where it doesn't connect. It doesn't get over, like they say in wrestling, because it's too much a sort of mental leap for folk to take. And I think for quite a while, it would be like that. Like I'd get frustrated. I'd want to turn the character or whatever into something else that was more making a comment, using the character to make a comment satirically about other things.
Yeah.
That's too much that's getting away from the point. Getting away from the point, it basically too much. And that's what I've realised sort of later on, is like when I've done, for instance, YouTube videos where I've used the character to do a video about, say, like internet relevance or like how transient it is or whatever. Like I did a music video called Banter for one thing that was all about that. And then in retrospect, I've realised like, well, this doesn't like watching this. It doesn't even land with me because it's too, especially that subject is making a video about memes and viral things. Within 2 weeks, your references are outdated. Now, do you know what I mean? So like in that video, there's a wee nod to like the Wildstone Raider. Like, you want some?
Yeah.
And you're like, you like now even you're like, who? What's that guy? Do you know what I mean? Which was the sort of point of the video. That's what I was sort of talking about in it. But it's too. Yeah, again, it's too inauthentic. It's not. I realise when I'm watching it now, it's like it's not what I want to see. It's not what I want to see that character doing. It's like that. Yeah. It's not as interesting as seeing that character interact with like real stuff and have real motivation or whatever.
So it's like your personal.
Yeah, it's too personal and too sort of salty. Maybe it comes across. I mean, that video, for instance, did have its own purpose, where that was a promo video for a Fringe show, and the opening video for the Fringe show, where I showed it on a screen and stuff as an intro thing. And it fit the theme of that show. That's what that show was about. And I sort of dissected the character, and it was more about me. That whole show was more about me going like, I don't like what I've turned this character into and stuff. Okay. So I'd go up and do bits of my stand-up that I was doing at the time in character. And then I'd flip my hat round and go, here's why I don't like this bit now. Can I? Yeah. But again, that wasn't about me going like, oh, this is why this character frustrates me, and that's how it's the narrow perspective of doing things in this character. It wasn't about that so much as like, it was almost like a therapy session that folk paid a $5 to see or whatever. Where I was kind of going like that, like I don't like how I've sort of almost offloaded my negative thoughts or energy or whatever into this character to sort of, do you know what I mean? Expunge sort of bad things, like nasty things or observations, but using this character as a sort of get out. Well, it's not me saying or doing these things or whatever, it's this character. But then I realise like that I've turned the character into somebody that I don't like. Do you know what I mean? So this has become a fucking darker and more menacing version of both this guy and like me, whatever, than I would like to see. Do you know what I mean? It's like
I like you're saying the salty, negative, kind of bitter thoughts. You put it on this guy, and then all of a sudden he's become this like embodiment of the part of yourself you don't like, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I sort of maybe selfishly used it as that for a wee while, until I sort of, that show was like me, I patched the character for a wee while. And maybe that's why actually, that was around about the time where I talked to Ian Pattison online. I'd messaged, he'd seen a show that I was in at the Pavilion, Billy and Tim 2, it was the first run of that, the first version of it. And I'd realised he'd been in the audience. I found that out and messaged him online and stuff and had a wee chat, very brief. But maybe I didn't follow up with him and meet up with him at the time, because at the time I was just like, I've got no intentions for this character. I'm gonna lay him to rest for a wee bit. I'll do this Fringe show and sort of get a few things off my chest. But I realised maybe like I needed to do that at the time or whatever, and it was some fucking mental health exercise and all this blank. But maybe I sort of needed to do that at the time, get that out of the way, to realise that I had to sort of jettison that version of the wee man. I'd sort of poisoned them with my own shit. And he'd become like just an outlet for shit like that. Just making comments about like in that video, making comments about the internet and just like social media or whatever else at the time. But it's just like, who cares? Like, I realise now it's just like, you're just another guy. You're just some other guy who ranting about like, this is how folk do things now, it was never like this.
Even that's relatable though, I'm like that all the time.
Yeah, I suppose. But it gets to a point where I'm like, this is why I've sort of avoided doing too much stand-up as myself.
Right.
Because he's just been an wee baldy guy ranting about stuff. He's just an baldy middle-aged guy going on about like, I wish I just Snapchatting each other these days or whatever else. It's like, who cares, man? It's just a bit more interesting to see a character's take on stuff.
Yeah.
But I had to refresh it, you know what I mean? I had to relate to this for a wee bit because that character had become the sort of the nasty version of events at times, you know what I mean? So working with Ian now and stuff, I suppose the timeline works out a wee bit. We're at that point in his timeline that we've been doing from the Fringe show we just did and stuff. I suppose around about that time the wee man would have been going to jail. So it kind of makes sense, it all adds up. But like, yeah.
I think it's cool that it's all documented though, because you can see that your growth or whatever, the journey of the character even. Because I don't think people were not going to watch it and be like, oh, that's shit, because it changed for a wee bit and then came back. But if it was the exact same thing the whole time, it maybe wouldn't be as interesting.
I mean, yeah, hopefully, I appreciate that. And I think maybe even if there's stuff I've done at the time where I'm like, well, that didn't land, or fucking nobody liked this in the comments or whatever. But then in retrospect, I have thought, look, at least I sort of tried to do something different. Even if you try and it misses the mark or whatever, maybe it takes a while, but you end up more content with at least the attempt than just going, I'll just do the same gag over and over again, but with like a slightly different intonation or whatever. And actually, Ian Pattison did tell me one of the things that made him go, I want to work with this guy, was actually a video where that was sort of out there, and it had come from that Fringe show I did, where I'd sort of picked apart and sort of analysed the character and criticised it from my point of view and stuff. The culmination of that show, which a couple of reviews and stuff said was the highlight, it sort of did build to this point in the show where I had the big screen behind me and the wee man popped up. So by this point in the show, I've become just myself, like Neil. I'm talking about the wee man, but then the wee man pops up on the screen behind me, and I've timed it so that I have a wee interaction with him where he's absolutely slating me, and then we have a rap battle.
Yeah.
So it worked great as a live thing because like folk are watching it as if I'm interacting with the screen at the time.
That's cool.
And it did really work. I'm glad I left that to then because it was the sort of highlight of the show. And it was tricky to get the timing and stuff, but it worked. So I thought it worked better as a live thing. We later sort of filmed that as a sketch.
Yeah, I watched that one. It's class.
You seen that? So when we did it as a sketch, it's the wee man's on my shoulder as a wee guy. So it was my pal Archie that did. They filmed it and did all the special effects and stuff. He was like, amazingly talented. So really appreciate like ever having met him and stuff.
Yeah.
I later thought, I'm like watching that back, I'm like, I should have rewritten that more for a YouTube video, because it's like there's parts there, I'm like, well, that worked as a sort of live back and forth, but I could have rewritten that and made it maybe shorter, more concise for YouTube, all that stuff anyway. But I later found out that Ian, that was the one video that made Ian go, well, this is actually, he's
It's a bit of something
at least attempting something a bit more interesting, a bit different. Like it's not just like that the whole time, and I'm still got Buckfast, I'm still in a swing.
Yeah.
Even though I'm in my 40s by this point. You know what I mean? It's like it gets to a point where folk go, it's a weird balance you need to get, because it's like if you try different things or whatever, you get folk comments like, just stay on our song, just stay, like pump your mouth, whatever. But then if you do that sort of thing, just the same thing over again, then you get comments going like, you're in your 40s, like what, you're still going, whatever. So it's like you need to have a balance of, well, at least you need to try things like that, and then even if it doesn't work, well, you go, well, I've learned for that or whatever, and I'll use bits of that to, you know what I mean, influence something else I do. But you don't find out until you try it. One of the things actually reminded me to bring up when I'm mentioning Archie doing the special effects and stuff for that video, and he did a lot of that sort of things and a bunch of.
Does he do all your New York? I was going to say the production value in your videos is insane.
Well, that's what I was going to mention. He doesn't do it all. Sometimes it's just I edit clips together myself. If there's like CGI kind of stuff, it'll be Archie. And then there's other stuff that I've done. It's my pal Bob. His real name's Callum Weir, but Bob's his nickname. He's filmed and edited and directed a lot of the stuff I've done, including like short films I've done more recently. But one thing I've always been adamant about, I remember that when I did that Fringe show, and I made a point to talk about this, because the production value, like I say, the videos look so good. And I got like, guess how much money I spent on these videos. And folk always assume that it's like I'm some rich trust fund kid, that I'm like, oh, just funnel off daddy's daddy's trust fund into this. But I'm like, I've spent £0 or pennies on all of these things. I just happen to know very talented people who are up for. Well, it's like a lot. It's like a sort of business thing as well, where I have got them work out there. Like at the time, been doing stuff for the BBC and stuff that's like, well, your talents are so noticeable that it's like, if you do a video with me, I know folk that will see this, that will give you work on TV shows and etc. and stuff. And that has sort of worked out where I'm like, you know that I'm not going to pay you what you're worth, because like, you're like Hollywood level of skill here, but it's like a show reel, it's like a showcase for everyone. So it has sort of worked out in that respect. But I've always been adamant about that, folk. I'm not surprised that folk would assume like, oh, you must be spending all this money, and it's like, what's the point? It's just like, it's like, I made a whole point in that show to be like, I spend no money in these, folk are paid with banter. It's all about just the fun and the experience of doing it. Yeah. It's like, this is my own special brand of socialism, where we just spread the banter out. Everyone gets their own fair share of banter. And then I remember, it was a nice review, it was a good review I got for Chortle overall, but it still frustrates me to this day where the guy said in the review, he expresses frustration about having funneled all this money into these videos, and I'm like, mate, it's the opposite of what I said. It's like you heard what you wanted to hear, you must have just switched off. And it's this whole thing like perception of reality. Just for his perception, he's watching these clips, these videos, and he's going like, well, that looks like he's spent a bit of money and the budget here and stuff. So he's just went away and looked at his notes and assumed again. I'm like, nah, man. It's like, it's like a proof of concept thing as well. It's like you can make these videos in Scotland that look better than anything that's on telly, and you can do it for no money as long as folk are talented. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah, I just have, you know what I mean, through sort of wee man stuff has obviously helped and stuff. like meeting these very talented people, do you know what I mean? But yeah, just been very appreciative to sort of being able to work with these folk who, like, I knew from the off, with or without my help, getting their sort of skills seen, I knew they'd be going on to work on like big, you know what I mean, big name sort of international production stuff, and I've been proven right about it. I mean, so it's cool to still be able to work with them even when they're like
when they're
not working. It's like my mate Bob for one thing. Still continue to work with him whenever we both match up with stuff. When he's not working in whatever else Hollywood, maybe I shouldn't mention all the stuff he's worked on, but it's like your top TV shows and stuff and films. Cool. You know, I mean, all over the place. But I recently did a short film with him.
Is that the Sharkey?
The Sharkey, yeah.
I was trying to see if I could watch it online anyway.
Yeah, no, so like, I'm always in two minds about bringing it up because folk immediately obviously want to see it.
Yeah.
But
won a few awards and stuff, right?
It's won a bunch by this point. But that's part of the reason it's not online yet, is because it has to go through all these film festivals.
Okay. And
part of their sort of rules are that it can't be online.
Okay.
Before we judge it, before it gets shown at our showcase kind of thing. So I think it's got one more to go through in London.
Okay.
And then I can put it online. But it just won like 2 of the top awards at the Canadian International Comedy Festival. It won similar in Cardiff.
Nice.
And another one in London. Not a bit pretentious, but I literally can't remember. He's got like an image of all the laurels, like the wreaths and stuff for all the film festivals. And it is a lot. I mean, it's like, I've done stuff in the past that's won awards or whatever, but not to that extent, certainly. So I'm quite nicely surprised by it. Especially because it's like a sketch. It was a live sketch that we'd done together years ago, probably 10 years ago now. More actually. We were doing this kind of sketch troupe at the time. And one of the sketches that always sort of did well with a live audience was me playing the Sharkey. And not to be a spoiler and stuff, but like basically a steaming guy that comes up and bothers a bunch of young guys and just spins outrageous lies and yarns to them. And I think it kind of connects with what, again, it's that authenticity, because it is based on a number of guys that have came up to us in the past.
I was going to say.
Even the Sharkey, that was like an early one as a guy in East Kilbride, I think. I remember we were waiting at the bus stop in East Kilbride when we were teenagers, probably, and this wee guy always stuck in my mind. A wee guy kept referring, I'm the Sharkey, have you heard of me? He kept saying that. So just always stuck in my mind how funny, just naturally funny the experience was.
Yeah.
So there's a number, it's been inspired by a number of boys like that came up to us. We did that as a live sketch. And then during lockdown, I'd just chat with Bob on Zoom and stuff, whatever, get catch up, lives in London. And I brought up the fact, I was talking about that sketch, and I remember it doing especially well at a couple of shows, and I'm like, I remember someone offered to film it at one point. It was like, there was one show especially where it was just like every line got a round of applause and stuff. I was like, I should have just filmed that and at least had a record of it and stuff. I think he just suggested, like, let's just go and do it as a short film kind of thing. I think he'd been looking for something to do as a short film. So we just sort of reworked it into a wee short, cast. So he'd originally played one of the young guys in the bus stop in the live sketch and stuff. So we recast it to have like younger guys. It was actually, so by the time we came to film it, I'd aged into the role. Like, so at the time doing it on stage, again, it would have been more cartoonish, big comedy glasses, and I had a sailor hat on.
Right.
Because that was based on one of the guys that came up to us who did have a sailor hat on.
Okay, right.
He was like steaming.
Nice.
And there was a bunch of guys were standing outside Sunny World, and he came up to us and kept referring to us as two women. even though we just kept going like, mate, there's 4 or 5 guys here. He's like, shut up, you couple of cows. Kept referring to us as specifically two women, and it always tickled me. I'm like, It's not just the fact that he kept referring to us as women, specifically 2, even though there's definitely about half a dozen of us.
You can't write that stuff.
Exactly, so I just worked that into it, where it's like 3 guys, and he just keeps referring to them as specifically 2 women. And spins these sort of outrageous lies. So we recast the young guys with a few guys, sort of comic actors and stuff, who I've had in other stuff or whatever, or I've even just been a fan of. Ewan Ferguson, Tyrion Boyd, and Paul Dock. You might know Paul Dock for like Twitter stuff, and Tyrion as well. So I was really chuffed with the casting of them. They were all brilliant as well. If I've got any sort of things that I would have changed about it, I would have given them more close-ups, because personally when I watch it now, the things that crack me up are the reaction shots. Like when it cuts to just close-ups of them just looking confused, some of my favourite bits is just the awkward reaction. Like, I always sticks in my mind of like, that's how the South Park guys, like Trey Parker, Matt Stone, in interviews and stuff, they were always saying what people often don't realise about comedy is like the funniest part is the awkward reaction. If there's just a moment of just silence, that's the funny part. So you notice in South Park, quite often the laugh comes not from someone saying something ridiculous or offensive or outrageous. The laugh comes when it cuts back to, like, say, the classroom all sitting there like looking shocked. That's the funny part, do you know what I mean? So that's what I think maybe makes it work as a short film, as opposed to the live. That's what makes the difference. Like the live one would have been you get the big reaction on the line, or not to be a spoiler, but there's some physical aspects to it as well, which I had to argue for when we filmed it. Basically, I had to argue for some slapstick. I'm like, the Three Stooges is still funny. Never a guy slapping another guy or hitting him with a hammer is always going to be funny throughout history, right? You can't, even now we're in a place where you're like, oh, we need to do a health and safety check. Is there a coordinator for this sort of thing? It's just like, you know what I mean? So I had to argue for that, talking to Bob. He's been working in the industry in London and stuff for so many years that he's so used to, do you know what I mean? You fill out all these forms and stuff. So even just the idea of there being a bit of slapstick violence in it and stuff, he's just like, oh no, it's like focal, oh no, and it's like, it's assault. I'm like, aye, but in this context, you know what I mean? The Three Stooges would assault each other for half an hour straight, and it's hilarious. It's just about how you do it, and so that's what I've heard from the film festivals that's done well at and stuff, and that has won awards at. That's when the big laughs come. It's those slapstick moments or the sort of awkward reactions. It's like that's when it hits. It's frustrating for me, actually, almost cursed from my point of view, however well that's doing right now in film festivals, and it's won all these awards. I've never been able to see it with an audience. We keep getting these emails from like Canada and whoever else. Very complimentary, some of the nicest wee sort of reviews almost, if you want to put it like that, that we've had for stuff, and they're like the judging panel was knocking themselves at this. It's especially cool when it's in Canada, and you're like, I've got quite a thick Scottish accent, and we've subtitled it, which I was adamant about as well. But it's cool to read that, but it's frustrating that I've never been there to see it. It's like cursed. There's been a couple of times when I've made it along to film festivals that it's made it into, and it's cursed. So one big one was done in London. So I went down and stayed with Bob and his wife. Big, massive cinema we're in, sort of wherever it is, the West End of London, big industry thing and all that. All these people have made short films and this big festival. And they've told us that the Sharkies, where it is even placed in the lineup of the schedule of short films been shown, and how much they liked it and all that, and how well it's going to do. And then we sat there at the back, watched all these short films, big massive audience that are responding to everything. I'm like, right, this will get laughs. And then the lights come up at the end, and I'm like furious. Like I go up to the guy, and I'm like, what happened, Sharkey? And to be fair to him, he's very apologetic, and it was like a technical issue. It's like his editor had somehow excluded it from the final showing. To be fair to him, he paid for my train ticket that I'd paid for down to London and stuff, which isn't cheap, obviously. So it's like I do appreciate that, but it is just frustrating. My only other experience is going through to Edinburgh myself this time, because Bob told me it's got into this film festival, if you want to call it that. A much smaller scale thing in Edinburgh. So I went along. It's in the Banshee Labyrinth. Do you know that venue?
No, I don't think so.
So a horror themed, I guess, sort of gothic-y, hammer horror type bar in Edinburgh. It's got a wee screening room, not quite a cinema space, but like a screening room with a fair sized screen for the size of the room it is, like church pews almost. Okay. Like 4 of them or whatever. So it didn't affect many people. It's quite a small room. So I went along, absolutely pissing rain, chucking it down, freezing. Went there myself, got into one of the wee church pews. There's some very old ladies sat next to us. Some other very old ladies come in and were like, oh, can I realise they know each other? I'm like, that's very politely. I'm like, do you want in next to your pals? Like, oh, thank you, son. So they squeeze in next to us, they sit in these church pews. Eventually, when my film comes on, Sharkey, the sound's gubbed for one thing. They're just playing things off VLC player, some playlist. So just, I don't know what was wrong with it, like everything else seemed fine, but it was just wah, 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 it sounded like underwater. Yeah. So I'm just watching it going like, man, this is not, I can't even hear, and it's not getting over, because folk are just like, what? It's not that busy anyway. Halfway through my film, one of these sweet wee old grannies turns to the door and goes, this has been shite, do you want to leave? And I'm just like, pardon me, so I turned in and I'm like, cheers, this is my film, it's on the now. Because I'm not unrecognisable in it, I let myself go, grew a big beard and grew my male pattern baldness out and that. So you wouldn't recognise me if I'm wearing the big varifocals. And she was very sweet, she was like, oh no, I'm sorry son, I didn't mean just that, I just mean the whole... I'm like, don't worry about it, I'm about to leave. So I literally let the film end and then just got out. I just got up and left. I'm like, this is, as proud as I am as sort of the responses this film's got, it's just me actually watching it get a response is cursed. It's like...
that's brutal.
That is, because it's frustrating that way, where it's like... It is a strange situation, like you've putting videos out online for years on YouTube, on social media, whatever. You maybe get some idea how well it's been perceived for comments or whatever else, but it is always just the case, you just put something out there and you go, well, I don't know, I can only imagine folk either laughing at that or going, the fuck's that, or whatever kind of response, like, I don't know, it's just out there. Yeah. It's like a nice feeling. It's obviously a nice feeling being up on stage and making folk laugh and getting that immediate response when you're there. But it's also a nice feeling being amongst people, watching something you've made. Yeah. Like, almost more relaxing that way, where it's like, well, the job's been done. And now I get to sort of almost reap the positivity for it. So it's maybe been quite a while since I've experienced something like that, because it's like, it's just been so long where you just put stuff out there and you don't know how folk are taking it or whatever, what it means to them or whatever. Yeah. So it's almost like I've forgotten what it feels like to... I mean, I suppose in a smaller sort of case of that, it's like a write for stuff, like I write for Breaking the News on BBC.
Yeah, I did that sometimes. I saw you as like head writer and stuff sometimes.
Yeah,
stuff like that. Yeah.
So that's a nice thing. Similar feeling where if I watch it on TV and if a joke I've written, Des says whatever, then if it cuts to the audience like laughing and stuff, it gets you around the applause and you're like, that's a cool thing. Yeah. You're like, so it almost feels cooler that it's like, I'm outside of it, like I'm not even there, but I get to watch folk laugh at a thing that I get to watch how well it's done and stuff. But it's been a frustrating experience with that film. Yeah. Certainly. So I don't know. It's not online yet or anything.
So it's still time.
Yeah, so but like I don't know, it's like it'll almost be a bittersweet thing of like putting it online, because it's like a different thing then as well, and it's like it gets put online and then folk will just watch it themselves or whatever.
Yeah, not do like a wee screen in it, like.
I might at some point.
Somewhere.
I might at some point have a wee invited audience or something maybe. But again, that's a sort of different situation. If you've got an invited audience, where it's almost like that way, folk feel pressured into like, ha 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 ha, I can hear it, or whatever, or like, do you know what I mean? What I was talking about earlier on. Exactly, or folk think they're helping you, but going, and it's not, it's more embarrassing or whatever. It's sort of, it's an more awkward situation. It would have been nice to see it in that one in London, where it's just amongst all these folk. Yeah. So you're almost hidden, like folk, I'm unrecognisable from it. So folk wouldn't even realise it's the same guy sitting there. Which has been a sort of common thing for me my whole, life, is like folk don't recognise us, generally speaking, to the point where it's like when I've gigged as the wee man in the past, as soon as I take the hat off, folk, it's like a completely different person. I've been up on stage with a hat on, went backstage, got changed, and came out and stood at the bar and talked to people about the character that they just saw. Yeah. And I've been more derogatory than any other member of the audience. I've been like, would you think, oh, this guy? And I'm like, I laughed along and stuff. I'm like, it was a bit broad for me. It's a bit cheap, just doing that voice, man. It's a bit insulting, to be honest.
No, that's a great impression of me, to do that.
Aye, exactly. It's like, folk, I have slagged me to other folk more than other folk. I have trolled myself more than folk may realise. Like, I've literally went and stood at the bar. I think I've talked to folk who have just watched me a few feet away, maybe, and not realised it's the same guy, because it just, again, it's that perception as reality sort of thing. Yeah. Folk, if you put on a certain type of hat, or even if at a different angle or whatever, folk, immediately their judgments of you have changed. And even off stage, or not doing stuff in character, putting stuff online, I've always enjoyed sort of using that. Of like, I dress in a certain way. I dress not that far away from just being the wee man anyway, right? And I sort of enjoy the judgments you get off the people immediately. Like, I'm in my 40s, right? But if I walk into a supermarket, and I'm usually wearing a baseball cap anyway, so I walk into a supermarket, without fail, the security guard will follow me. Right, okay. Every single like, not that obviously just trailing me away, but it's like you go down the end of an aisle and I'll be like, but he's looking at me, I can feel him looking at me, and I'll look up and he's just like, every single aisle I'll go down. Right. And I'm like, I've just got that air. I've just got that, to the point where it's like, even in my local co-op, I'll go in, and I've seen wee guys thieving around me, and the security guard's watching me, and I'm like, mate.
I've got a club card.
Exactly, mate. I'm getting lead writer for a BBC show. That's like, I don't know. But it's funny, I sort of like using that judgment. I like going in dressed like that, and seeing security guards, or whoever else it is, I can tell by their face that they've made immediate judgments about me. Yeah. I like going up and putting on my most polite phone voice to disarm them. Like, I'll go up and go like, excuse me, where are the avocados, or whatever, do you know what I mean? Yeah. And you can see them kind of going like that, like it's like their perception's been changed or whatever, and then I can start stealing when they're distracted. Stealing the avocados, though. I've got some decorum.
But I didn't want to touch on the Ned's Crew Feet Wee Man. I'm sure you've covered that hundreds of times, too much. But I honestly remember, I don't even think it was YouTube. I think we had copies of it on our phone. Yeah. And everyone used to drink and sleep over in my garage, and we would just watch it all the time. So it's mental just to meet you, whatever it is, like 15. How long is it since you did the video?
What's this? What year is that?
2024.
17 years then.
17 years
Coming
ago.
up in a few months, it'll be 18 years, I guess.
Okay,
by about spring time, 2025. That'll be 18 years ago.
Cool. Because it's Christmas, so I'd wrap up here. I got you a wee you're a Scottish icon, so I got you a Scottish landmark in Bofiddle Rock if you want a reprint.
All right.
You don't need to put it up, that's for you. But,
Awesome.
Thanks very much for coming.
I didn't expect that. It's lovely. Sure that. It's lovely. Cool.
But yeah, aye, thanks very much.
Big rock. Whereabouts is that?
Bucky, funnily enough.
Is it?
I didn't even mean that.
I do. No, that's perfect, man.